At 0900 on February 19, 1945, Corporal Tony Stein crouched behind a shallow depression in the black volcanic sand of Iwo Jima, gripping a weapon his sergeant had called a stupid idea 3 months earlier. 23 years old, 6 combat missions, 0 conventional kills. The Japanese had fortified every meter of this 8-square-mile rock with 11 miles of interconnected tunnels, 17,000 defenders, and overlapping fields of fire that turned the beach into a killing ground. Stein was among the first men from Company A, 1st Battalion, 28th Marines, to establish a position beyond the beach. Around him, Marines were pinned down by concentrated machine gun and mortar fire from camouflaged pillboxes they couldn't see. By mid-morning, the 5th Marine Division had already lost 43 men dead. Marines lay scattered across the terrace beach, their bodies twisted in the volcanic ash. The standard issue. Browning M1919 machine guns were effective, but they weighed 31 pounds empty and fired 400 rounds per minute. Good for defense, terrible for assault. Stein had known this problem for months. Back in November 1944, at Camp Tarawa in Hawaii, he had watched machine gun crews struggle during training exercises. The gunners couldn't keep up with advancing rifle platoon. They set up, fired, then spent minutes breaking down and moving forward. By then, the momentum was gone. Tony Stein was a toolmaker. Born in Dayton, Ohio to Austrian Jewish immigrants who had fled anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe. He had spent his teenage years working a lathe at Patterson Field, then as a tool and die maker at Dello Products. He understood machines. He understood what they could do and what they couldn't. When he joined the Par Marines in September 1942, that mechanical mind went with him on Bougainville. He had killed 5 Japanese snipers in a single day. But it was his ability to modify equipment that caught the attention of Sergeant Mel Grevich. Grevich had been experimenting with something unusual during the Bougainville campaign in 1943. He had salvaged an AN-M2 aircraft machine gun from a crashed Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bomber. The AN-M2 was designed for aerial combat. It weighed only 21 pounds, 10 pounds lighter than the M1919. More importantly, it could fire 1,200 to 500 rounds per minute 3 times faster. But there was a problem. The AN-M2 had spade grips designed for aircraft mounts. No stock, no sights, no way for a single Marine to carry it and fire accurately while advancing. When Grevich approached Stein in November 1944, the Par Marines had just been disbanded. Both men had been reassigned to the 28th Marines, 5th Marine Division. They were preparing for an operation the brass wouldn't name yet, but everyone knew it would be ugly. Grevich showed Stein the AN-M2. Stein saw potential. They worked at night in a maintenance shed. Stein cut down an M1 Garand buttstock, hollowing it out to accept the machine gun's buffer tube. He fabricated a solenoid trigger mechanism from sheet metal scraps. Grevich welded a Browning automatic rifle bipod to the front. They added rear sights for aiming. The result was crude, 25 pounds, fed by a 100-round ammunition box capable of emptying that box in 5 seconds of continuous fire. They called it the Stinger. Stein built 6 of them, 1 for each of Company G's 3 rifle platoon, 1 for the demolition section, 1 for Grevich, and 1 for himself. The reaction from other Marines was mixed. Some called it brilliant. Others called it a death trap. One sergeant looked at the improvised weapon and said it would jam on the first burst. Another said the thin barrel would melt after 2 magazines. A platoon commander from 2nd Battalion said only an idiot would carry a plain gun into an infantry fight. But when Stein test-fired it on the range, emptying a full box into a target at 200 yards in under 6 seconds, the skeptics went quiet. Company commanders approved it. Battalion approved it. The Stinger was going to war. Now on the beach at Iwo Jima, Stein tightened his grip on the weapon. The Stinger's barrel was already warm. Around him, Marines were dying because they couldn't locate the hidden Japanese positions. Standard procedure was to call for tanks or naval gunfire, but the tanks were bogged down in the soft volcanic ash, and naval shells couldn't hit what they couldn't see. Stein made a decision. If you want to see how Stein's plain gun performed in the chaos of Iwo Jima, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Pacific. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Stein. He stood up fully upright in the middle of a beach where Japanese machine gunners had overlapping fields of fire. Corporal Tony Stein exposed himself to draw enemy attention. He needed them to reveal their positions. He needed to see the muzzle flashes. Bullets snapped past his head. Mortar rounds detonated in the ash nearby. And then Stein saw it. A pillbox 75 yards northwest camouflaged with volcanic rock and sand. The barrel of a Type 92 heavy machine gun protruding just inches. Stein lowered the Stinger, aimed, and squeezed the solenoid trigger. The weapon roared to life at 12,200 rounds per minute. The pillbox disintegrated under the torrent of 30 caliber rounds. 1,200 bullets per minute hammered the volcanic rock in sandbags. The Type 92 fell silent. Through the dust and smoke, Stein could see movement inside the position. Then nothing. He shifted his aim to a second. Pillbox 40 yards to the left. Another burst. 5 seconds of continuous fire. The concrete structure absorbed some rounds, but the volume of fire was overwhelming. The Japanese machine gun crew inside stopped shooting. Around Stein, Marines began to move. Seeing the enemy position suppressed, riflemen advanced from there. Shallow depressions in the sand. Sergeants shouted orders. The assault was moving again. Stein charged the first pillbox. The Stinger was lighter than the standard M1919, and he could run with it. He reached the position in seconds. Inside, 3 Japanese soldiers lay dead. The 1,200 rounds per minute rate of fire had simply cut through everything. He moved to the second pillbox. Same result. 2 enemy soldiers down. The position destroyed. But then Stein felt the Stinger go light in his hands. The ammunition box was empty. 100 rounds gone in less than 10 seconds of actual trigger time. He had anticipated this problem during training in Hawaii, but experiencing it in combat was different. The Stinger was devastating. It was also impossibly hungry. Stein looked back toward the beach. 200 yards. The ammunition resupply point was near the waterline where landing craft were still unloading supplies under sporadic mortar fire. He would have to cross open ground fully exposed to get more linked 30 caliber ammunition. He started running. The volcanic sand made every step difficult. It wasn't like normal sand. The ash was loose, terraced, and gave way underfoot. Marines called it running through ball bearings. Stein's boots sank 3 in with each stride. Halfway to the beach, he passed a wounded Marine. Private first class from 2nd Platoon shrapnel wound to the left leg. The man was conscious but couldn't walk. Stein grabbed him, slung him over his shoulder, and kept running. The Marine weighed 160 pounds. The Stinger weighed 25. Stein's combat pack added another 30. He was carrying over 215 pounds through volcanic ash while Japanese mortars bracketed the beach. He reached the supply point at 0945. Corpsman took the wounded Marine. Stein